Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Time to get started. Everybody here on a nice, early, rainy day. Glad you're here.
I'm here.
You're here. There we are. We're all set up. Okay, our first band we have today is from River City High School. Hey! They're the Sea Monkeys 2, and they're under the direction of Felicia Weatherly. There's Felicia. Wow. Today our adjudicator is Steve Homan in the back. You kids know all about this stuff. And the feedback clinician is Joe Maderi from, came all the way in from New Jersey to see us today. So, great musician. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the kids and sit back, relax, and enjoy.
That song was Basin Street Blues, and our next song is What a Wonderful World.
Trees of green, red roses too.
night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow seem pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. As the babies cry, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow seem pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. The babies cry as I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hello. I'm going to introduce the band now. On guitar, we have Lauren. On bass, we have Maya. And on drums, we have Ishmael. And Samuel. And on piano, we have TJ and Philip. And on sax, we have Mary. Clarinet, we have Jojo. And on trombone, we have Thomas. And trumpet, me, trombone. And the vocalists are Shantae and Victoria. And this next song is That's Plenty.
And don't forget David.
One, two, three, four.
comments, go ahead. It's all yours.
Just let me know when I'm running out of time.
We will. We'll give you a 10-minute warning.
Don't forget to take the mic with you. The mic down
There's
there.
a wireless down here.
Boy, you guys picked up a lot of what we talked about yesterday, so that was pretty wonderful. Yeah, I would just like to hit a few spots and see if we can make a few changes. On the very first tune that you did, the Basin Street Blues, the singer sings the first line and you answer, right? Now, could you play your answer for me right now? Yeah. So she sings. Well, why don't you do it from the beginning, and her line, and then your response.
One, two, one, two, three.
Piano player required.
One, two, one, two, three, four.
Won't you come along with me?
I'm going to try something, right? Just that, right? Could you just play your horn line? Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you pick up right, or is it right on the beat? Okay. Now, can you play without looking at? Together. 1, 2, 3. Now, look at the back wall. Okay, look at the back wall there, right? Point your horns to the back wall. Now, take a deep breath like you want it, right? And don't wait till the last minute to take a breath. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I want to hear. Because that's a solo line, right? And it's only a short little snippet there, right? So it's nothing to memorize it. So if you're looking down at the music, I mean, have you ever gone to a concert and the musicians are on stage and the conductor stands on the stage and he gives a downbeat, and what the musicians do is they turn the music around and they don't play. This isn't music. What is music is what comes out of your horns. Like when you have a conversation with your friends, that's a conversation. Music is our language. And if you point your horns out there and play, you're communicating with the people out there. And you have more fun. So, so let's do it. And don't hold back, because you're not going to bury her because she's not singing then. Okay, so why don't you do the intro again? Let's try it.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Won't you come along with me? Down Mississippi.
Sorry, but so on those responses, memorize them and play them out toward that back wall. And what really makes a big difference is right before you play, open up and breathe. If you watch a professional singer, that's what they do, and that'll get that sound. You're not going to bury anybody. You know, you're the star at that point. Now, when she starts singing, the one thing I have to comment on is I hear so many bands, and I'm talking about professional bands, and the balance is terrible. Somebody's taking a solo or somebody's singing and you can't hear them because everybody else is playing too loud. The balance of this band is fabulous. I could hear everything I needed to hear at all times, and I was really impressed by that. So anyway, when that beginning part, you know, when you had that little solo spot, you know, play it out there. And when she starts singing, what often I hear when I hear groups play, and musicians are playing backgrounds, intonation falls. because they're trying to play under the singer, but they're not breathing through their horns. So usually pitches go sharp. And there's a couple of things you can do. When you're playing those the whole note backgrounds there, the brass players, if you want, you can take a plunger and put the plunger halfway over. I don't think there's time for a mute change, but mutes are great too. Another thing you see a lot of musicians do is they'll use the stand, the brass players will use the stand as a mute. So you can play with a little bit fuller sound, it's just where you're directing your sound. So, and actually, you know, she's got a good projection voice. She's got a lot of projection. So actually, you could be playing too far under her. You can come up a little bit, and you're not going to obscure her voice at all, okay? In the reed players, try to make your sound bigger. You don't have to go down so small, because once again, the tone quality will suffer, and the pitch will wander. So could I just hear where you start with the whole notes behind her? Is there a spot right there? Yeah, yeah. Just where you're starting the back of the see where that is. Yeah. Okay. Just play that for me. Okay. Without the vocal, just the horn line, just the horns. Okay. Deep breath. 2, 3, 4. It sound like a vocal group backing her up. You know, so part of it is think like you're singing. She's singing, you should be singing. Open up your mouth. And as I said, trumpet you can play toward the stand, and that acts as a natural mute. You know, you're not going to, in the low register there, you're not going to cover her up. So you know, just open up and play a little, give it a little bit more. There's you know, one other thing I noticed when I play with my band. Now, you know, probably everything was set up when you came in this morning, but I've never set up this way. I like the rhythm section. I like the band as tight together as possible. In fact, on jazz festivals, I've had arguments with promoters because they'll give us this giant stage, and they want to see 6 musicians covering the stage. You know, and you almost need a telephone to communicate what you're, you know. But the thing is I like the rhythm section. I like the whole band right as close together as possible. In fact, if you see me playing, I'm usually standing. The back of my legs are usually right in front of the bass drum. You know, I just like that close. On the drums, when you're playing, especially on the slower tunes, that hi-hat chick, you know, is very important, and especially when you have guitar and bass. And I love seeing guitar in a rhythm section. You know, in jazz, especially rhythm guitar, in jazz groups, it's all but disappeared. And my own band, if we have to cut a piece because of budget or whatever, we cut the piano. I have guitar first and foremost. I like to hear that steady rhythm from the guitar. But it has to be in lockstep with the hi-hat. A lot of drummers like the bass player on the hi-hat side, so that so they can hear, they can communicate. And a lot of times you're on bandstands where it's hard, the acoustics aren't good, and that's why you do that. But personally, I would put I would probably put the guitar and the bass right in the crook of the piano, and then have the drums right over there. See, look at the distance. So I don't know. For me, a lot of times you have trouble hearing. And the other thing is bringing the rhythm section right behind the horns, because the horns are playing this way. And so a lot of times in a tune, the sound doesn't go backward. And so the rhythm section is not catching every nuance from the horns. So having it closer together, I think is more comfortable. So anyway, getting back to those horn lines, that sounds great. Because we try that whole first chorus of the tune with everything we just talked about. I like to hear it. So, and when you play your response to her in the verse there, try it. If you don't have to look at the music, look at them.
One, two, one, two, three, four.
Won't you come along with me? Down Mississippi.
that down, you know, but let her hear it. That helps. That's beautiful. I mean, it just glides into that so naturally, and coming back out of it, it's perfect. Yeah, that little line you have at the end, when she's singing the last note, you can bring that out. That's a great line, and you're the star at that point. And that's one of the things is when we're playing in the band, we have to know when our part is the part that's supposed to shine, or when we're supposed to support other. It's like being on a baseball team. You know, you're supporting the team, but then there's times when you have to go back to back, you know. The trumpet player is like, well, it's like the quarterback of a football team. You're the leader. And one thing, so in those backgrounds, when the notes were changing, you were nodding them. You know, and that's great because everybody has the part, but they're cueing off of you. You're leading them, so you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's perfect. When you get to that last note, I said, bring that line out. I have to mention this. When I was learning jazz, it wasn't this stuff. It wasn't on the radio at that time. You know, you had to go out and buy recordings. They were records then, not CDs, and a lot of that stuff was an issue. So you had to go on flea markets and stuff. Now you can find almost everything reissued. There's an album of Bobby Hackett and Jack Teagarden. It's called Coast to Coast, where they do all the what we call the traditional. I guess the most famous of them, you know, That's a Plenty, Basin Street Blues, St. James Infirmary, all the biggies, and they do them the way they were supposed to be played. And I tell you, I learned so much about how to find a harmony, you know, just how the tune should be set up. And you could probably find them on YouTube as well. But it's called Coast to Coast, Jack Teagarden, Bobby Hackett, Jack Teagarden. There's a lot of videos of Jack Teagarden playing, or all these guys playing, all over YouTube. And so if you listen, for me it was always an inspiration. You know, what made me want to play was listening to recordings of my heroes. And they inspired me, their sound, their ideas. And so I did listening and listening and listening and more listening. And as I said, that inspired me to do what I was doing. So I can't stress that enough. Can I hear the beginning of the next tune, The Wonderful World? Very nice, beautiful singing. One thing that's unique about the clarinet and is that low register. No instrument has that. You know, clarinet is a mistake, by the way. Do you realize that? That the guy was trying to invent something else, and he was trying to. There was two instruments that pre-existed it. One was called the shallow, and that's why what we call the low register of the clarinet, because that's all it was. And there was an instrument called the clarion, which was only played the upper register. And he was an oboe maker, and he said, well, if I can, and a recorder maker, and he said, if I can make an instrument that combined the two. And so he he came up with this. Of course, it had a lot less keys then. And he ended up with something totally different. Now, if you read on the acoustics of instruments, clarinets totally should not work. And one of the things to think about is the lowest note on the clarinet is what we call an 8-foot note, which means you divide that length in half to 4 feet. And a clarinet to play that, your low E should be 4 feet long. So according to the laws of acoustics, it shouldn't work. So we end up with this low register that really shouldn't exist. You know, it's funny, if you stand a clarinet next to a flute's longer than the clarinet. Yet the clarinet plays 6 notes lower. So that you know. So anyway, I'm going a long way around. But when you did that solo on Basin Street, it was beautiful sound, and it projected. And you know, there's a lot of guys out there that can't do that in that low register. They don't have that focus and the ability to get that sound out across the room. So that really was inspiring to me to hear you do that. It was just wonderful. Let's do just the intro on this. Now you are the star once again. One of the things that we used to do when I was working with different groups is we would get together and we would have an arrangement that a guy brought in, like the arrangement you're playing. And we would rehearse it, but as we rehearsed it, we'd say, well, you know, it'd sound better if we did this, or it'd sound better if we did this. Move the part up an octave, add a harmony note. We were constantly making changes, see? And then we would go out on a job, and we'd come back, and he'd say, well, that worked, but then we could do this too. And so the music was always experimental and always changing. We still do. And so when you're playing an arrangement, you know, a lot of times you can, if the arranger's there, you can make him very angry at you. But what you want to do is try a section and say, well, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do this. That little introduction on Wonderful World, because you're the star of that, right? Would you want to try an octave higher, or do you like the low register? You see what I'm saying? They're all things you can experiment with. But it's a nice little duet with the tenor and the clarinet. Can we try that? And remember, both of you are having a conversation. I would memorize it. You know, so because when you're performing, you can just look the audience in the eye. You know, I always tell people, would you rather talk to your best friend over the phone, or would you rather talk to them in person? And so people get on stage and they rely too much on microphones, and they look down. So they're not looking at the people they're talking to. And I say, just point your horn out to the audience and play. And now you're talking to the audience. Yeah. So, but let's try that beginning. I just want to hear that introduction. Okay, somebody want to count up? You're sneaking into the room, right? No, you want to say, I'm here. You see what I'm saying? So you want to say, this tune is beginning now. You know, there was a famous record that was, in its day, was a million seller. And it was, you know, it was actually what they used to call the B-side. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't the tune that you think anybody would be listening to. And it was Artie Shaw's Begin to Begin. And they were discussing once, you know, critics were talking about why was the song such a hit. And one of the things they said, the very beginning of the introduction was very simple. It was just the brass going bop, and the saxes go ba da 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 bum bum like that, right? But what happened is when the trumpet hit that stinger, the trumpet section, it got your attention. Oh, what's that? So right from the beginning of the record, you're like, oh, something's happening here. So play your first note, but don't look at the music. Okay? Yeah, now, take a deep breath and just play that note so loud that you think it's going to distort. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Yeah. Give me one. Yeah, just that note. Just play that note. Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, good. Now, I want the same thing. Just play the introduction, right? And we'll play it like that. 2, 3, 4. Yeah. so yeah, but you keep that sound and even bring it more. And the way you do that is you relax your mouth, open up. It's funny because I say to people, if you're talking to a friend of yours and you're in a room, there's nobody in the room, and you're having a conversation, but people start coming in the room and more, they're making noise. So what do you have to do? You have to talk louder. Does anybody ever say, well, when I'm talking louder, I'm using a lot more air than when I was talking soft? Not really. Not really. When I raise my voice to this, I don't feel like I'm using a lot more air than when I'm talking like this. So how do we talk louder? Nobody thinks about that. But part of it is opening up more. And then keep your mouth like that. It becomes more fun because then your horn becomes your voice. You know, you don't play the saxophone, you don't play the trumpet, you don't play the clarinet, you don't play the trombone. What you're doing is it's you. Those instruments are your voice. They only sound the way they do because of you. And that's what makes it fun. Otherwise, we'd all be machines. One time I was reading an interview when Benny Goodman was in his 80s. And the interviewer said, what clarinet players do you like? And he said, he thought a minute, he said, well, Johnny Dodds, Sidney Bechet, Edmund Hall, Buster Bailey, and he went through a list of, you know, maybe 10, 15 clarinet players. And Pee Wee Russell. And I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, none of those clarinet players sound anything like the other. They had nothing, almost nothing in common. But then I realized, if you put a recording on, and they came in when they're solo, and you didn't know they were on the record, in the instant you'd say, oh, that's Pee Wee Russell, or that's Buster Bailey, or that's Edmund Hall, because they all sounded individual. And see, in the early jazz guys, you know, that's what they were going for, in developing individual personalities. It was just a wonderful thing, but part of that was using their voice through the horn. If you open up more. So somebody, start at the beginning, but both horns, just go for it. Just take it to the point where you think that sound's going to distort. Go ahead.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And the rhythm section's in on the same, right on that first beat, right? So when you come in, right there, you're coming in, you can come in volume-wise, you're so much below her, and you're supposed to be supporting her. So when that first beat comes in, you know, if you're gonna play the cymbal, or you can use brushes if you want, you know, whatever you want to use, or play on the hi-hat, but give that first beat a definition. Funny story, when I was, you know, first playing with, I guess, what they call, I don't know what a professional is. You know, Charlie Chaplin said we're all amateurs because we never lived long enough to be anything else. But the first band I worked with, you know, and I'm like 19 years old or whatever, you know, back then, right? Everybody else in the band is 59, 60s, you know, seasoned professionals. In fact, the drummer was the leader, a wonderful drummer, just absolutely wonderful. And I remember he called me and said, can you make this gig? And I showed up, and he's standing there, and there's a fellow named Tony DiNicola. And I said, you Tony DiNicola? And he says, yes. I said, I'm Joe Badiri. And his jaw hit the floor. He goes, oh, what did I do? You know, because he sees this young guy, you know, and I said, all these guys have been playing together for years and years and years. So I remember the first tune that they played was a tune called Hindustan, and we're doing the melody chords, and I'm standing in front of the bass drum, right? And we're getting to the end of the 32 bars, and I'm thinking, gee, I wonder who has the first solo, who's supposed to take the first solo. All of a sudden, this drumstick goes in my back like this, and he yells, go! You know, 10 choruses later, I was in that band, you know. But he used to drive me. You know, it was like a surfer finding the perfect wave. You know, he'd get on that cymbal, you know, and it wasn't that it was, you know, he wasn't trying to cover me volume-wise, but the energy. And one of the things that always impressed me about Tony, in fact, there's a movie called The Ladies' Man, a Jerry Lewis movie. I don't know if maybe you know who Jerry Lewis was, but there's a movie called The Ladies' Man, and there's a scene with Harry James's band, and Tony's right in the front of the band, playing drums in that movie. But anyway, even on a ballad, the energy, you know, da-da, da-da, It was just right there from the beginning. So when you come in, do that count off. And when the rhythm section comes in, just come in strong. You know, if it's too much, she'll tell you. She'll turn around and yell at you. Okay, but you know, I only say play, and if the director goes like this, that's better than the director having to say, come on up. See? Okay, let's do that beginning again. Okay. Very nice. I'm living on time, so I love the idea of the tenor obbligato behind the vocal. You know, one of the people I idolize is Lester Young. And at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about sources, and one of the people I'm going to talk about is where Lester Young got his ideas. But all those Billie Holiday sides, you know, the small group sides, where Lester's backing her up. And what Lester would do is he would learn the tune. You know, Lester Young used to say, in order to improvise on a tune, you have to know all the lyrics. You know, not only just the melody and the chords, but the lyrics. But listen to those records. It's just what he's playing. And there's other guys. Ben Webster is a huge favorite of mine on tenor. You know, and the other thing is, once again, she sounds great, and she's projecting. She's, you know, you're here. So you're not hearing how much she's filling the room. So you can come up more in your playing. And I love, by the way, in this arrangement, because I gotta get to the next one, but I love the fact that you had the 16-bar solo. Once again, you can play out more, you know, and one of the things you want to do is memorize the melody. Learn the melody, almost like you're playing it by ear. And so that any point in the melody, if somebody says, could you start here, you can start there, or you can start there, you know, just know that melody, because that inspires you to decorate it more when you're playing your solo. Okay, in the rhythm section on that chord, where it goes to it's a G flat, right, chord, which is the unexpected chord. That's the chord that adds so much texture to the tune. But when it comes to that chord, hit that first beat. You know, because otherwise, one of the things, one of my pet peeves from when I work with different rhythm sections is a lot of, especially pianists, like to play the chord after it appears in the song. So if you're playing a solo and it gets to the beginning of that measure and it goes to, like, let's say, you know, it goes to a G flat chord, like in this case, right? And you sail into that chord. You sound like you're wrong because the piano player's not playing the chord until 3 beats later. You see what I'm saying? And so, but make sure it's clear that when that chord comes in. I want to talk real quickly about That's a Plenty. One of my favorites. You know what would be wonderful is, once again, that coast to coast. Listen to them play, but memorize it, because you're looking at the music and you're waiting for something to happen, but it doesn't happen until after it already went by. One of the things about improvisation is when you go from one note to the next, you hear the next note before you get to it. Your ears should always be listening ahead of where you're playing. And it drives the music forward all the time. And when we play wind instruments, you know, you go over to a piano and you hit a key, that's the note that's going to come out. Or, you know, and the thing is on a wind instrument, we know that we play the fingering that's supposedly the correct fingering. That doesn't mean that pitch is going to come out. You know, the fact that, you know, it's a miracle to me when you hear people play. You know, because we can play in tune, but that note on an instrument could be anywhere. It's our ear hearing where the note belongs. But if you learn to play the tune without the music, you know, it just gives you so much more freedom. You know, and the other thing is, once again, the trumpet's the lead. You know, just fill the room with your sound. You're the star. And one of the things that I like to do is if I'm playing tenor in a band or clarinet, what I always do is I always learn the melody. I always learn the trumpet part, because that gives me ideas of what to play for a harmony part. Because I like to harmonize a lot. So the trumpet's playing, you know, da da da, they're E, you know, E flat, E flat, you know, right? I'll play a third above the trumpet if I'm playing clarinet. You know, so I'll play G, F sharp, da 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 da, you know, and work out a harmony line that way. It's just something, you know, it's fun to do. And but what's important is you know the melody, you know what the melody line's doing as well. And a good practice is write out the melody, and then write out a harmony that follows the melody. As I said, I kind of like doing a third above it. In the early days, if you listen to very early jazz recordings, a lot of times the clarinet player is playing a fifth above the melody. And the reason he's doing that is because in the old acoustic recording days, it was hard to pick up the instruments. And by opening the interval more, it cut better. That was all. But can you play the first 16 bars of the tune for me? Play without looking.
One, two, three, four.
It sounds better. It immediately sounds better, and it's more fun. You don't want to be chained to these notes, you know. And once again, if you breathe from the diaphragm, breathing lower, right, that helps us get our sound out there. When we practice generally in rooms in our houses, and they're small rooms. And so we play, and it sounds loud. Well, of course it's loud. We're just bouncing around this small room. But that's not what a stage is like. When I first started playing professional, of course these guys are all seasoned guys. And I'm trying to keep up with them, and I'm coming off the bandstand with a headache. You know, and I'm thinking, man, I'm not surviving this, you know. And the trumpet player looks at me and he says, put your ears out there. I said, put my ears out there. He says, yeah, put yourself out there listening and play to there instead of playing up here. And what I learned was you didn't have to blow hard to be heard out there. Because it's not about volume, it's about projection. They're two different things. What projection means is that we can play on stage, and even if we're playing pianissimo, we're heard in the back of the room. And what the difference is how fast the air is moving. So it's the speed of the air, not the amount of air. And if you're reading the music, you're going to keep slowing that air down. What's the next note? What's the next note? It's like a guy that's lost putting on the brake every time he gets to an intersection in his car. So, but if you memorize the music, you can concentrate on maintaining that speed of air, and you can play and play and play, and your lip will never get tired. So that, you know, it just makes it so much more fun, and that's the bottom line. We're good. Thank you. Thank you so much.